Welcome to He Say, She Say. I am your host, Char, founder of Law for Love, the most special place in the legal system in Atlanta. Excited to just serve families in this space where we are taking nearly 14 years of family law experience when marriages are broken and unpacking it to deliver to marriages before it's too late. Taking these lessons learned from failed marriages so that you can make the change for the better in your own family. So tonight I want to dive in. This is a corollary to a video we did a few weeks ago called Why Your Wife Isn't Feeling You Anymore. And tonight, dishing it out to the ladies just to talk about specifically one of a very, very common occurrence in marriages that is kind of playing in the background and bringing it to your awareness so that if you do struggle with fear of abandonment, you can see these three signs and do something about it before it's too late. So let's go ahead and just dive in. So the very, very first sign is that he's not feeling you. And when we talk about him not feeling you anymore, we're talking about him being distant, him not really responding to you emotionally or to like little hints that you're making emotionally. The conversations, they don't really go too deep. They're very surface level, very shallow. He's showing little interest in your thoughts or what you're feeling or what you have been doing throughout the day. And this can play out as a lack of affection, reduced physical intimacy, any kind of touching, intimate touching, and noticeable decrease in meaningful interactions. So when a man is becoming emotionally distant, this is the first sign that he may have already checked out. And when I talk about checking out, he may already be lawyering up. It is a very common occurrence that a lot of women experience in a very, very painful way. They get hit with an email or a letter from a lawyer saying, hey, we've been hired to represent your husband. A lot of women who have been living with this kind of distancing from their husband are still oftentimes shocked to be contacted by an attorney or to be served by a sheriff with divorce papers. But this had been going on oftentimes. What we notice with men in particular, oftentimes this is going on for years before they actually take those steps to bring it to your awareness. But a man who is in this place or this stage of disconnect with his wife may already be discussing his rights and preparing a strategy for legally moving forward with a divorce. The second sign that he may have already checked out, he's not with you. There is an increased absence and avoidance that's been taking place in your marriage. So he's spending a lot of time away, more and more from home for social events that are not involving you. He's not including you. He's has this pattern of, maybe y'all would normally cross paths in the living room or in the kitchen. He doesn't come in until after he knows you've left, right? So he starts developing a pattern of avoiding you in shared spaces and creating that physical distance by making excuses to spend more time away at work. That is a very, very common one. Work, right? It's hard to argue with somebody who's telling you he has to work, especially if he's the primary breadwinner. But more time at work is a really, really big red flag and a sign that he may be creating a space where he's really emotionally desiring to escape the relationship rather than dealing with the underlying issues. And I'm going to talk about that specifically when it deals with the relationship contract that involves fear of abandonment. So we'll get to that in just a minute about the underlying issues, but he may be avoiding having that conversation. So that's sign number 2. Sign number 3, he's not going with you. He's not even interested in developing future plans with you. So when maybe y'all used to talk about what are we going to do for vacation? What are we going to do, on the next travel that we're going with the family? Oh, what about the outing with our friends? He's showing less and less interest in having those conversations, or he's not willing to commit. Hey, do you want to go with me to the blah, blah, blah? And he's like, I'm not sure yet. I'll let you know. That is sign number 3 that we're discussing right now, a very common sign that this may be going on for months or years before a woman who fears abandonment. I'm speaking to you ladies who struggle with fear of abandonment and you have not dealt with it, you have not confronted it, you need some healing in that area. Your fear of abandonment is actually contributing to these 3 signs that he has checked out of the relationship. So this fear of abandonment is a contract. For those of you who don't know, as a family law attorney, 99% of my work has been in the area of contract law, negotiating and building contracts for sustainable family arrangements in the course of litigation or mediation, right? And so everything for me is contractual. And I am here to kind of share that insight from a contract analysis so that you can understand that it's just more than a way that you feel. It's more than you just being helpless to something that happened to you in the past. Like there is actually a form of agreement that takes place inside of your heart and your mind. If you struggle with fear of abandonment, I'm going to show you how this works and why it's creating these signs that you might see if your husband's already checked out. So this relationship contract. So let me define relationship contract. It is a set of agreements between 2 or more people. That's what a relationship contract is. That is what I'm saying when I call it a relationship contract. What do we agree to? Anyone who has worked with me in any capacity knows that one of the things that I hone in on right away is, okay, who are we talking about and what are we talking about and what are we agreeing to? And in contract law, that is where the work begins. Getting really, really clear on who we're talking about and what we're talking about. And as simple as that may sound, many people get married having 2 different sets of expectations. Many people go to the altar and exchange very, very similar vows, but in their belief systems and in their expectations are also another form of agreement where you're hoping that the other person agrees with you, but they don't. Like they may not even know the terms of your expectations. And so when we talk about expectations, we're also talking about contracts from the standpoint of things that you believe someone should be doing, or you believe someone how you should be showing up in the relationship without ever or fully developing an understanding, or a meeting of the minds is the word that we use in contract law. We don't always develop a meeting of the minds that we got on the same page to define this thing the same way, that we both really fully agree. And this is what's at the root of a lot of conflict in marriage, is that we don't have a meeting of the minds when we have expectations that the other person doesn't necessarily know about or agree to. So this is what I'm talking about when I talk about relationship contracts. Does that make sense? Are y'all tracking with me? Am I clear? So whenever you want to understand your relationship contract with your husband, again, I'm speaking to wives tonight about our relationship contracts with our husband. The very, very first thing you have to do is you have to evaluate your beliefs. These are common beliefs that are attached to the relationship or the agreements, the beliefs. When I say beliefs, Beliefs is the same as agreement, y'all. When we begin to understand the relationship between belief, agreement, and contract, your life will completely change, because your internal beliefs are your agreements. These are the things that you hold to be true, whether or not there's a really a true factual basis for any of it. The person who suffers with, who is crippled by, whose relationships are harmed by a fear of abandonment, have these types of agreements. And this is not an exhaustive list, but these are the most common that I have observed and have confronted in my work with individuals who were struggling with this fear. He's going to leave me. So where is that fear coming from? Well, that fear for many women, especially in the Black community, if we could go ahead and take an aside about the Black community, when you are dealing with a wife who may not have had her father in the home, whether that was because her father was not alive when she grew up, her father was in prison when she grew up, her father was a deadbeat, or her father was emotionally absent. His body was there, but his feelings were not. This is a common underlying cause for a fear of being left in a woman. It goes back to the father and the relationship with the father. And um, when you are marrying a woman, you're marrying her entire life experience and those things that she has or has not processed from her childhood. So he will leave me is oftentimes rooted in a very early childhood experience related to the father. He will hurt me. Again, this is stemming from the father and the father's involvement in her upbringing, but extended beyond her father when she began having any type of relationship with any other man. So whether it was getting dumped in the 6th grade by Billy Boy, or whether it was her first serious relationship, the guy that she was engaged to get married, and there was a big blow up before the marriage, or maybe even a divorce, right? He will hurt me becomes an agreement or a contract that is a part of her thinking that is operating. It's an app that's operating in the background of your relationship, men. You need to understand this about your women. Like I'm talking to wives right now, but it's very important for men to understand that these agreements are operating in the background. And I want to show you how they relate with your relationship. Another very common agreement or contract that's operating internally inside of many wives who fear abandonment: he will make me look stupid. Now, this one is a big deal because, ladies, we get on the men a lot about them being prideful. And, the way that male pride manifests is a lot more overt. It's a lot more open and obvious to, the average observer. But female pride is more subtle, and it's more, it floats under the radar a little bit more amongst women. I hear from men that they notice the pride more obviously than we women do. But he will not make me look stupid is because I believe the first two agreements, I have an agreement with these first two beliefs. I'm not going to allow myself to be in a position where I allow myself to be vulnerable with him, or where I'm not going to put myself in a position where I'm depending on him. And this is huge, ladies, because again, one of the default ways that we learn how to protect ourselves from a young age comes from, taking care of ourselves, looking out for ourselves, and not letting anyone get the best of us. But, spoiler alert, coming into a marriage, this type of thinking is counterproductive, and it kind of is at the root of what's pushing him away when we talked about those first three signs. And then finally, I don't need him. I can't tell you, and I'll repeat myself over and over again whenever I am talking to young ladies who want to get married, women who are already married, veteran wives, one of the most hurtful things that we can say to our men is that I don't need you. And even if you never say it out of your mouth, when you have this belief system operating in the background, your agreement with this idea, because all of this is about self-protection. And when you're protecting yourself as a wife inside of a marriage, you're going to be giving feedback to your husband that's creating that emotional shutdown and disconnect, him distancing himself from you, and him not seeing a future with y'all together because you're really operating out of these agreements. It's the agreements that you have, it's the contracts that you have that govern and dictate your behavior. When these things reflect the thing that you're thinking, then what's going to flow out of your mouth is going to be speaking to these things that you really believe. So you could be telling him, oh, I love you, or I want to live the rest of my life with you. I can't live without you. You could be saying that to him. But when you're getting into conflict with him, when you're speaking in the midst of stress or conflict, these things are coming out of your mouth. And these things are the things that you're actually demonstrating with your behavior. You cannot speak and act contrary to what your true belief is. And this is what the experience is that a husband is having when those three signs that he's checked out, he's checking out because you're speaking and your words are coming from this place. Does that make sense? Are y'all with me? Does this make sense? Because I really want you to get this. I really, really want you, if you recognize those three signs, you've been pushing your man away, and you know, and you really have a conversation and say, you know what, I struggle with this, and I never really thought about the way that I think, or that I might be afraid that I might get left. Abandonment is being left. Abandonment is being on your own. Abandonment is saying, you know what, I'd rather leave you before you leave me. Fear of abandonment will manifest as a person who will go ahead and just tear it up and be the one that's responsible for tearing it up. Before you leave me, I'll leave you. He reacts to your actions. Yes. When I think these thoughts, I'm speaking, the stuff I'm saying out my mouth is proving this is what I'm thinking. That's what the contract is. I cannot behave or speak contrary to what my true belief is. Out of the abundance of what I'm thinking is what my mouth is going to say. This is a law, y'all. Okay. I appreciate your feedback because I'm here to serve you. I'm here to minister to you and give y'all some real, like, look, maybe your thing is not fear of abandonment, but if you get this connection between your beliefs and your contracts that you have with yourself and the stuff that you're saying and the stuff that you're doing, that's actually like creating, is contributing to the issue. I'm not giving your husbands a pass. I know they're not perfect. None of them are. None of us are. But we can definitely make a ton of difference in our relationships when we take ownership of our stuff. And so I'm really, really big on isolating. Hey, wives, look, let's isolate our stuff right here. So thank you for the feedback. Now, let me tell you what most of the time your husband is believing. When I see this play out in a broken marriage over the past 14 years, over thousands of different families. I'm not saying that it's been 100% correct, but this has been 99% of husbands. 99% of husbands, when it comes to their wives, they have made the agreement, the contract with themselves and with their wives that they love her. They love her. More often than not, when I am working with men, they love their wife. They may not know how to express certain things to her. They might do stuff that drive her up a wall. But when he decided that he was going to commit his life to her, it was because he was serious and he meant that thing. Are there jokers out here? Yes. I'm not talking about jokers, y'all. I'm talking about real men, good men, Men who get married because they mean business, they love their wives, and they have already made a contract, an agreement that this my wife. Even when they mess up, even when they fall short, they have a deep commitment and love for her. And this is the contract that he has going on inside of himself. He's committed to her. Most men that we have worked with are deeply loyal when it comes to their wives. 99% of them. Very, very loyal. And become very, very wounded at any sign of disloyalty from their wives because of the depth of their love, their commitment, and their loyalty to their wives. And they come into the marriage wanting to take care of her. Now, take care of her, it could show up a lot of ways. This could be an emotional provision. It could be a financial provision. It could be a physical provision. But men who are serious about their role as king and priest of their family, this is the contract, this is the commitment, this is the agreement and the belief system that he married her with, that he came into the thing with. I will take care of her, and I will be here for her. So if you're not picking up what I'm throwing down already, you're starting to see how these two cannot walk in agreement. If he's thinking and believing like this, in ignorance of her fear of being abandoned. Let me take a minute real quick here. Internal contract can be carried out in fear, which will manifest itself in unhealthy emotions. And yes, your emotions follow your beliefs. The thing you think dictates how you feel. Yes. That's why we have to train our thinking. This is why the scriptures teach, cast down every imagination that raises itself against the knowledge of Mashiach, the knowledge of, most people will call Christ, the knowledge of Yahushua HaMashiach. Cast down those imaginations. That is an instruction to take authority over the way you think. We're programmed and conditioned to make our decisions based on how we feel. But how we feel is not always rooted in fact. So you always have to evaluate your beliefs so that you can analyze whether or not your beliefs are true. That's what casting down any imagination that raises itself against the knowledge of the anointed one. It means anything that raises itself or that opposes truth. The anointed one represents truth. So any thought that opposes truth needs to be cast down. You need to tear it down. What we do instead, we feel how we feel, and then we make all the facts line up with how we feel without analyzing our thoughts, whether or not they be true. And most women who are suffering or struggling, whether they realize it or not, with fear that he's going to leave me, fear I'm going to look up one day and he's going to be gone. Please, I am letting you know right now, based off of the evidence of thousands of marriages that I have interfaced with in nearly 14 years. 99% of the time, these contracts that men have made concerning their wives are true. 99% of the time. Again, yes, there are jokers out here. This broadcast is not intended for jokers. It's not. I'm talking about real men, good men, kings, men who want to be the kings and priests of their homes. This is how they come into marriage with their wives. This is what they really think and believe about their wives. And you know what women do? Because we're feeling insecure, we pick a fight with their brother to try to prove that all of this is a lie, when we're the one who believes the lie. He's keeping it real. These are the things that he said when he exchanged the vows. Did he not say these things when he vowed to be your husband? He said all of these things that he has lined up in his belief system, his internal contract, are consistent with his marriage vows. But you want to prove that he lied to you because you're afraid and you're insecure that this is not true. So here I want to teach you about contract principles. From the scriptures, the question is raised, how can two walk together unless they agree? I mean, we do the same exact thing in the law, in the legal system. We don't have an agreement or contract. Neither one of us could be bound if we didn't both agree to the terms, right? How can we walk together? How can we be husband and wife? How can we make this thing last unless we're on the same page? And the other contract principle here, so a contract can be set aside for vagueness that's caused by inconsistent terms. So in one place in the contract, it says that the paint is going to be red. And in the other part of the contract, it says that the same paint is going to be blue. So someone from the outside looking in can't really determine how to interpret what you were supposed to agree to because there were inconsistencies that created vagueness. The validity of a contract is based on its clarity and its consistency. And so when you got married, you committed your lives to one another for better or for worse, right? And that's why I was pointing out to, like, when it comes to 99% of men that I have personally spoken to, worked with, observed in this space, in marriage, in broken marriage, where their wives had a fear of abandonment, their belief system and their contract inside of the way that they feel and think towards their wife was consistent with their wedding vows. And most men have been okay with the better or worse part of it from the standpoint of, I know it's not going to be perfect, and I'll even sacrifice my own happiness, which is why so many men will work late and stay away from the house just to avoid this woman who's convinced that he's going to leave her anyway. This is what's happening in these families, y'all. But something happened, right? After the honeymoon, after the warm and fuzzies, after we took the wedding pictures, that triggered that fear. What was it? Was it an argument? Did he say something? Did he call you out your name? Did he yell at you? Did he threaten divorce? That's a big one, y'all. Threatening divorce is a big one that would trigger that fear of abandonment. And brothers, y'all need to know this. It be the heat of the moment, and everybody knows, oh, back on, be back on, the water under the bridge. Words stick longer than anything else. People don't forget what you said. And a threat to divorce will trigger the fear of abandonment like nothing else I've ever seen. And women aren't the only one who struggle with fear of abandonment, but I'm talking to the ladies tonight about how you can take action and how you could take authority over this fear. Did he trigger an old insecurity some kind of way? So this is what throws off those vows, that commitment to one another, to stick it through thick and thin, that better or worse. Well, when sister girl's fear gets triggered here, this is where you see that disruption taking place if she doesn't recognize and take hold of that fear and getting that fear under control. Because if you are not aware, y'all, my presentation has so many typos this week. We're going to do better. We're going to do better. I apologize for all of the typos. You will begin to act out of those beliefs, those agreements, with the fear that you have that he's going to leave you. And this is how you're going to finally prove that you were right. Y'all, I like to share the power of the mind when it comes to the brain always has to produce logic, right? And I'm gonna tell you how I learned this. So one of my grandmothers suffered with memory loss and forgot where she put the peanut butter. And I share this all the time because it's just so powerful, how powerful the mind is. She forgot where she placed the peanut butter. And the mind is always going to produce some form of logic, y'all. So for her, in forgetting where she put the peanut butter, she came up with a story that her grandson broke into her house and stole the peanut butter. Now, I shared this example. I call it peanut butter brain. Whenever we're working through helping people to deal with their contracts and their beliefs and confronting them with truth, I use the peanut butter brain analogy a lot because it highlights the power of the mind. The mind's job is to produce logic, something that's going to make sense. Now, we, with a healthy mind, can be on the outside looking in and hear the story about somebody's grandson breaking in to steal peanut butter, and that's all he stole. That's far-fetched to us. But in the mind of a person whose memory is being lost, that mind is not going to point at itself at being a problem. That mind is going to continue to produce a logic because we have to make sense of our reality. So when you really believe that somebody's going to leave you, you're going to look for evidence that you're right. Your mind is on a hunt on your behalf to prove you right. And it doesn't matter if you believe a lie or you believe the truth. The mind's job is to find evidence to prove you right. I hope this makes sense for y'all. Is that making sense? Because I'm going to tell you how Francine, and this is, of course, a made-up name, but Francine, she acted out of her fear in such a devastating way. What her childhood abandonment stuff really, really came to a head in her marriage when she fell ill. And so, when you're not feeling well, your body is weak and sick, it's even that much harder to manage your emotions and control the things that you say. And when she became sick, she really began lashing out verbally and emotionally against her husband. And I'll call him Ken. And Ken, when Francine got sick and she couldn't work, he was happy to take on the responsibility of getting a second job to hold the family down because he wanted his wife to get better. But then what began to happen, because Ken had to pick up an extra shift to make up for the money where Francine couldn't make money because she was sick, his being away at work really began to trigger that fear of abandonment. And she went from 0 to 100, accusing this man, cursing this man out. She did so many things to tear this man apart and to prove to him that she did not need him and that he was not going to make a fool out of her, when her fear of abandonment was triggered by his being away, working a full-time job and a second job at night to be there for her so that she could heal. So, of course, this wasn't making things better at home. And he, yes, began to look forward to getting off of his day job and going at his night job just to get away from her mouth. And he was still 10 toes down for her, for the marriage, as abusive as she had become. His family even became very concerned about his mental health because they began noticing the change in him because she was eating away at this man's confidence with her raggedy words. She was allowing her fear to lash out in this man in ways to tear him down and to make him think no one else would want him. And his family became concerned and began to reach out to him like, hey, is everything going okay? And for the most part, his family really didn't get involved. Some families get all up in the mix and be ready to jump in the middle of the fight and, swing. His family didn't do that because he was loyal to her, and he continued to keep that hedge of protection around her. Because in his mind, his wife wasn't well. He just needed to hold the family down. She would get better soon, and things would be okay tomorrow. That was his mindset. Like, he was fixed on being her husband, holding her down, and getting them through this season of hardship in her health and in their finances. Well, Francine was so convinced that this man was going to leave her anyway. She finally accomplished proving herself right by acting out. So what this lady did to Ken was so embarrassing to him. She publicly, instead of the private attacks that were going on at the house between her and him, yes, she did it in front of the kids, but she took it out of the house and into social media and began getting other people involved, making phone calls, sending text messages, posting things about Ken that were of the utmost disrespect, that finally that sealed it for him. He could not be a self-respecting man and continue to remain under that form of abuse, and finally made the painful decision to leave her. So what she had really accomplished was what she was expecting all along, right? She tore that man up with her mouth and her behavior until she pushed him out the door. And the whole time he was holding her down. The whole time he was loving her. The whole time he was committed to her. He wouldn't even let his family check her. And when that wasn't enough to make her kind of like take a step back and look at herself for a moment, when that wasn't enough, oh no, she turned that fire up because she was going to do something that was ignorant enough to prove herself right, that this man was going to leave her. And that's exactly what she accomplished. She ran this is a good brother we talking about, y'all. This ain't no piece of trash man that she drove away like this. A good brother. So when you have fear of abandonment operating in your own internal contract that is telling you that he's going to leave, then your little girl, see, this is where I talk about the little girl, because usually these fears manifest somewhere in our childhood or our adolescence. This is a place where you have not matured and you still act out as children do when children are afraid. So you begin showing up with the mouth unchecked, the emotions unchecked, the behavior unchecked, and push your husband away. This is how this relationship contract will end if left unchecked. When you're dealing with fear of abandonment. And if you want your man back, you have to confront every one of your internal agreements that you made from a place like, look, I'm not sitting here I'm not saying or minimizing that whatever happened to you, why you fear abandonment, that it's not valid. Like, those fears are valid. Whatever happened, happened. But honey, if you're going to stay married, if you're going to reconnect with your man, if you're going to start healing the harm that you've done with the way you've been speaking to him and the way you've been acting out of your fear, out of that little kid response, you're going to have to confront that. Because your fears, your contracts, your internal contracts that you brought into a marriage vow is inconsistent. It doesn't match. It doesn't line up. So if you're going to have to choose which set of contracts is more important to you, because one is going to have to go in order for you to create some peace. And this is kind of how it looks, right, side by side. How your relationship contract leads to brokenness, leads to conflict, leads to strife is because it doesn't match. You really believe, you got an agreement with yourself, oh, he's going to leave me. And he's sitting over here, he done already made his commitment that he loves you. You're over here believing he's going to hurt you when he's over here, he's already made the commitment that he's going to take care of you, that he's going to be committed to you. You're over here worried about him making you look stupid, and he just already decided that he's going to live the rest of his life with you, even though he knows you crazy. Ladies, your husband know you crazy, but he's already calculated that he wants to be with you. But you are convincing yourself you don't need him, and then you're going to prove it to him by pushing him out the door. Your vows to each other cannot coexist in this type of strife. This is where the strife comes from. It comes from inconsistent contract terms. I hope this is making sense. I really do. Because when we see how these contracts are playing out in our relationships, everything changes with respect to how much power you have to change the direction of your relationship and your connection to each other moving forward. So, depending on who you're listening to, ladies, so this is where, look, I'm sorry, I have to go in because when we have fear of abandonment, it's real easy to go get you a friend who also has fear of abandonment. So all of your emotions make perfect sense to her as well. And she's going to help rationalize to you to help you dictate all of his behavior and, interpret all of his behavior through your emotions that are lying to you, that are rooted on a contract that's with fear. So you're gonna find that friend that's gonna sit up there and co-sign with your fear and help you feel like you're justified for being afraid that he's gonna leave you, because she has the same problem and sitting up here in your ear helping you stay stuck, agreeing with your fears. And when you continue to prove yourself that your fears are right, that your fears are actually reality, oh yeah, he's going to finally, at some point, he's checking out. Even if his body is still there, his heart ain't there. It's plenty of men who have already emotionally checked out on their wives. Body's still there, spirit gone. Yep. My husband says it all the time. I knew you were crazy. Hey, men are very calculating. They realize that we're crazy. They don't completely understand how we're wired or how we think. But look, that man loves you. That man has already committed his life to you. They know that we think differently, but yet they desire to be with their wife for life. They mean that thing. Again, I'm talking about the real brothers, the kings, not the jokers. There are jokers who, they muddy the waters for us. I'm not talking about jokers, y'all, because I'll say it now and I'll say it continually. Victims attract jokers. And so there's some decisions that we have to make, right? You know, do you want to be a victim? You want to remain a victim? You want to remain tied to the fear of what happened to you in the past? Or do you want to be a queen? Because, you know, the journey from being a victim to a queen is definitely the journey that I went on when I decided, you know what? I looked up one day after my second abusive relationship, like literally getting hospitalized because I'm cutting, bleeding, fooling with this joker. And after getting out of that relationship, had to ask myself, how did I attract this to myself? How did I attract this to myself twice? Not just one person beat me upside my head, but two. I took myself out of the game. I put myself on the back burner to figure out what in me was attracting this to me, and it was the victim. It was my connection with Celie from The Color Purple and my empathy for her and every man in her life that did her wrong. I literally was putting myself through her journey as a victim. Victim, she remains in fear and she acts out of fear. That's what a victim does. A victim is blaming her husband for everything. And she looks for people to be on her team who are not going to challenge her to change, who are going to rationalize with her emotions and help her blame and demonize her man. That is what a victim is going to do. And she will continue to act out of childish fear and helplessness. And this is why victims attract jokers. Because if you want to be helpless and you want somebody to do you wrong and you expect everybody to do you wrong, then that's exactly what you're about to attract into your life. You're going to attract a joker who is going to cut up on you just like this. And it will perpetuate until you do something about your contracts and confront them. Because the journey from victim to queen was confronting your fear. I realized something was wrong with me. Why I attracted two jokers put their hands on me. And I had to take ownership that there was something that I was contributing to this issue. People who have been physically abused have the easiest path to claiming victim status. Oh, he put his hands on me. Oh, everybody's ready to like jump on the guy who put his hands on a woman. This is the easiest escape for a victim, not to take ownership of her behavior. I will never excuse any man putting his hands on a woman. I do not excuse the men who physically abuse me. But what I do recognize is that I played a part in being a victim that attracted jokers. I don't excuse them for their part in it, but I played a part as well with my victim Miss Celie mentality. And a queen decides to heal and she engages accountability. Someone who is going to hold her accountable and call crap on her lies when she's rational lying to herself. And rational lying to justify being stuck in her feelings and in her contracts that are not serving her and that are not serving her marriage. And a queen heals her little girl. She deals with those wounds from her young adulthood, her adolescence, or being a little girl so that she can mature into being a wife. She can go ahead and deal with those childhood emotions so she can show up as a wife to her husband. This is the difference between victim and queen. And yes, you could be a victim today and a queen tomorrow if you are willing to do the work and tell yourself the truth and deal with some hard facts that's going to help you deal with these contracts that are pushing your man away from you. So y'all, you don't name your business Law for Love and don't have nothing but love for the people. I love you all. Renegotiating your relationship contract is not easy. I'm not talking about this to oversimplify this. Hey, I began that journey. It took me 3 years to create the consistency in building new contracts with myself, to shed off that old skin of victim thinking and victim emotions, to develop into the queen mindset and the logical thinking and the reasoning that created that space for me to reconnect and to heal in my marriage and with my king, right? So it's not easy, but love is worth the fight. I am here to tell you, I'm here to encourage you. I hope this blesses y'all. I really do. Hey, look, if you found any value in tonight's teaching, look, I'm on a mission. I'm here to serve y'all what I know. That you could take this information and you could really start going to work and looking at the way that you think and be like, oh no, that's call BS on your fears. Fears are lies that are not serving you. And when you get really good at tearing those lies down and then replacing them with truth, you will find yourself more confident, more connected, and having more courage to just show up and be you, not afraid of what anybody else is going to do to you or harm you. I really, really hope this blesses you. And if it does, please like, share, and share the love of Law for Love. We'll be continuing to do these legal teachings in the relationship space, the relationship contracts. And I look forward to serving you again really, really soon. So with that, be blessed, and I love you, and look forward to doing this next week.